Hello, everyone. Hello, Mike. Um, I just had to get things ready, so I was running a bit late. So that's why I set it on 5 past. Um, anyway, I was a minute late or minute or two late. Um, so do you want me to share screens? But if we do that, I won't be able to see the live chat. Anyway, I'm covering Ed's the video, and Robert Breaker is wrong about the Civil War history, and I agree totally with Ed here, and my commentary.
Good evening. Well, it seems Robert Breaker just can't stay away from the Civil War. So we're going to look at the latest video. Everything you learned about the Civil War is wrong. And it's going to be a typical thing when neo-Confederates, they'll give you one side but not the other side. And they tell you stuff, this but not that. And, they try to give it a slant. And the war wasn't, of course, about slavery.
It was.
The war wasn't about slavery.
It was about slavery.
So let's see what they have to say here. Let's see here.
Everything you were taught about the Civil War is wrong. By Lachlan Seabrook. And I think I have.
So why is this guy so hung up on pushing this agenda? Why is this guy so hung up to tell you something that's not true? That the war was not about slavery.
It was. Yep.
Slavery is written into the Southern Constitution, the Confederate Constitution. It's part of their Constitution. Now, I bet he doesn't even mention that. Negro slavery, people. Okay? That was what they were fighting for, to continue the expansion of Negro slavery. That's why they seceded. At least the lower South. And then the other states seceded when the North asked for volunteers, and they said, okay, we're going to join those. But they all joined up with the Constitution, the Confederate Constitution, that would allow expansion of Negro slavery.
I have a favorite new author. Everything I knew as a Southerner about the Civil War and all the facts just happened to be in this book. It's just laid out perfectly. So if you want to know more about the Civil War, I would ask y'all to get this book. I bought it on Amazon.com.
If you're true Southern, you'd be saying war for Southern independence, not the Civil War. The Civil War is really how the Northerners describe it.
Thing you were taught about the Civil War is wrong, by Lachlan Seabrook. And this was an easy read and a good read, and I enjoyed it. I also got another book by him. Abraham Lincoln was a liberal. Jefferson Davis was a conservative.
Here we go.
I don't know about
like
people.
19th century concepts are going to be pushed into the 21st century, liberal and conservative. Jefferson Davis is a Democrat. Lincoln was a Whig that became a Republican.
This is what it looks like.
And Ed knows what he's talking about.
Confederate flag facts. So I pretty much have found a new author that I really like, Lachlan Seabrook. It's kind of interesting because my dad grew up in Seabrook, Texas. I don't know, that's just kind of neat. But when I grew up here in the South, in Milton, Florida, I'll never forget being in about 6th, 7th, 8th grade, one of those, because I was in middle school. I remember our teacher teaching in history class, and she says, now, one thing I want you all to remember is this. She says, I want you all to remember that the South was right, and it was about states' rights.
It wasn't about states' rights. One thing, states' rights don't exist. There's no such thing as states' rights, no individual rights. States exist to protect the individual. There's no such thing as states' rights. Then he's going to talk about the right to secession. There's no right to secession. It's not even in the Confederate Constitution, people. Even in the Confederate Constitution, they don't give a right for states to secede. It's baloney.
Yep.
And I remember being taught that in a secular school here in Milton, Florida.
And Breaker's clearly a dishonest man, and he lied to me blatantly last year on the telephone and via email that he didn't say those things in his interracial article. So I don't trust what Robert Breaker says. He blatantly lies.
Florida. And I remember my teacher saying that and saying, I want you to study it. She said, you get to college, sure as the world, they're going to teach you that it was all about slavery, but they're wrong if you study it out. She said that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start today with Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 20. One of them they call evil good and good evil.
Mm-hmm.
That put darkness for light and light for darkness. That put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. God says there's a woe on somebody if he calls evil good and good evil.
Yeah.
And God says you think you're wise, you really need to study.
Mm-hmm.
See, there are a lot of people out there that think they've got this Civil War thing figured out,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going by revisionist history. They're going by what the victors wrote.
No, this is revisionist history. We have the original documents. We have what the vice president said, that the South was going to be built, the Confederacy was going to be built on a new cornerstone, one where the Negro was an inferior race. That's what documented.
And we're one race anyway. So when they say the Negro is an inferior race, that is racism, and I don't tolerate that. No skin color is inferior anyway. We all can't help the way we were born, and we're all from the race of Adam and Eve.
People, we have the Confederate Constitution, where they wrote Negro slavery into it. That's not in the American Constitution. I have the Confederate Constitution over here, and they compare the American Constitution to the Confederate Constitution. Big blank spot where the American Constitution is. They didn't put slavery, the word slavery in there. Breaker loves that word slavery. That's why he wants to change the word slavery to slavery.
Yep.
And they're not going to the source to see for themselves what the truth is.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are wrong about the Civil War, and they think the North was right, the South was wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they justify this belief by saying, and the South were slave owners and they were evil. And I can't tell you how many times I heard people say the evil South, or the evil Confederates, or the evil Confederacy, or the
Confederacy was evil. The Confederacy was evil because it was defending an evil constitution. In their constitution, they had the right to continue Negro slavery and expansion.
And
Negro
I don't
slavery.
support slavery of any
He's not
kind.
going to mention that. I guarantee you, people, he is not going to say one word about what the Confederate Constitution said in it about Negro slavery.
Because Robert Breaker is dishonest, blatantly dishonest.
evil Southern people.
No one said Southern people. Lincoln never said the Southern people were evil. He was married to a Southern. See, this is his hyper paranoia. Hyper paranoia. No one said everyone in the South was evil. No one said everyone in the Confederacy was evil. No one said everyone in the South was fighting for slavery. But the slave owners were, because they wrote it in the Constitution.
And I look at that and I go, well, that's not the South that I grew up in. That's not
the South he grew up in. That's not the South he grew up in, people. The war was 1860.
Yeah, and it's 2020 now.
And he's talking about the South he grew up in. That's 100 years later. He talked.
See, when I was in the United States, I wanted to say this. Breaker always says he wished he lived in the 1800s and preached the gospel. Anyway, he was born in the late 20th century, right? In the 1970s, right? The same time frame as me, right? So we're born when we're born. It's all part of God's plan anyway. So, yeah.
Talking about
South that I know. The other day, I went fishing out at Carpenter's Park, where I did my video recently about the COVID-19 as it can attack. I was fishing there, and I drove in, and I drove right by the boat launch. And I saw something that just confirmed to me what I already know, having studied this all out, that everything we're being taught today is a lie. Today, when they see the Confederate flag, they say racist hate, and that's what you're supposed to believe because they say that. Well, I saw something that was interesting. I saw a black man in a pickup truck.
Oh, there we go. They're going to see a black man with a Confederate flag, and it's supposed to change something.
With Confederate flags all over it, launching his bass boat.
Whoa, that changes everything, people. You got the American flag, or you got the Confederate flag, people. You don't got both. That's the reality. They fought against each other. Now, you want to keep the Confederate flags in some museum? That's fine. But don't act like they're the American flag. They don't. They don't represent freedom. The Confederate flag does not represent freedom. The American flag represents freedom.
White friend. Now, you're supposed to believe that the Confederate flag
This is a simplistic, naive, childish thinking of a 12-year-old.
Yep.
That he sets up these little straw men. Everyone hates the Confederate flag, and you see the Confederate flag, you're supposed to think racism and this, that, and the other thing. What we're supposed to think is that it represented a cause that was defending slavery, because it did. It's in their Constitution, Robert Breaker.
Racist, and that whites and blacks in the South want to hate each other.
No one said that. No one said that. Straw man. He's not different than Brian Denver. It's not different than all these other guys out there. That's
right.
They think all the blacks and the whites hate each other in the South.
But they don't.
How long we get along with each other? Yeah,
and he's breaking, he carries on with a lot of garbage.
Jim Crow laws? That was the argument for Jim Crow laws. We get along well in the South as Jim Crow laws. That was the argument.
That's what they try to get across to. And here was a white guy and a black guy that were friends.
Yeah. Ooh, wow.
I don't know if the black guy owned the truck, but he was driving a truck that had Confederate flags all over. Right?
What does that mean? I mean, it has nothing to do with history. It has nothing to do with the issue. That's the South I grew up in.
There in the front window shield right there.
There's just hypersensitivity about his heritage. But go to his blog and see why the Civil War still matters, people. If you don't think this guy's a nut.
Off of that.
He's got 187 thumbs up on this. This guy is telling you that evil is good and good is evil. The verses he wrote are pointing to him. The Confederacy, if it had won, it would expand slavery. That's the reality of it. And even the Confederates, many Confederates recognized it was good. There's Robert E. Lee said it was good that the Confederacy had lost.
Of the mirror, everything. And I said, why would a black guy have...
By the way, Robert Lee recognized that there was no legal grounds for secession. I have his letters, Robert Lee's memoirs. And he has memoir. He says, yeah, there's no legal right.
And he knows what he's talking about, Robert Breaker.
Confederate flag, unless he knew what I knew. And what a lot of people are teaching today is lies. So when you study out the Civil War, you can see why a black guy would like the Confederate flag. It's about heritage, not about hate.
It's heritage. Well, then you should allow you should have no problem with your daughters marrying a black man.
Exactly, Ed. When Breaker's daughters are old enough, right? When they become adults, then you should not have a problem them marrying black men from the United States.
Isn't he only issue about his issue about interracial marriage, his heritage? His whole big thing on why Christians can't enter interracial marriage is he wants to keep the same heritage. But now he's saying a black man can share the same heritage. Do you understand how confused this guy is?
See, breaking double talks, that's what it's about, right? And his interracial marriage article is complete nonsense.
Many of you I've told to look up H.K. Edgerton, a man in South Carolina who is a Confederate black man. And he's a man.
Yeah, because the Confederates at the end of the war were desperate and they put blacks in, and the blacks were fighting to get their freedom. That didn't deny the fact that the Constitution was still going to have slavery. You had free black people in the Confederacy. You had free blacks in the Confederacy, free people, black people. It got rarer and rarer because they cracked down on slavery and came tougher and tougher by 1840s, 1860. This is all history that he wants to give you a piece over here and a piece over there.
And not the full history from Breaker.
Now, this book, everything you were taught about the Civil War is wrong. The very beginning of this book is quite amazing to me. Because the very beginning of this book is a foreword by Nelson W. Winbush. Nelson W. Winbush, he's a black man standing in front of a Confederate flag. He says, my grandfather, Louis Napoleon Nelson, was a Confederate soldier who in his later years related many of his war experiences to me. At age 14, he accompanied his master's two sons, Sidney and E.R. Oldman, as members of the 7th Kentucky Cavalry. Louis,
his master's two sons.
This guy's grandfather was made the temporary chaplain. Later at Lookout Mountain, his position was made official, making him the only known black Confederate chaplain. He told me that when he was conducting services, it was not uncommon for Confederates and Yankees to worship together. When the service
wait a minute. Yankees weren't supposed to be Christians. Yankees and Confederates worshiping together? Oh, according to a Breaker, all the Yankees that came down were Universalists and Unitarians and were spiritualizing the King James Bible.
Was over, soldiers returned to their respective sides to resume firing at each other.
That's it. What does it tell you? That both sides were Christian?
Yeah.
That the North, this guy lied to you already?
Of course he does.
He doesn't.
Breaker lies too many times. I called him out so many times. And then he's right.
That blog about the Yankees being all Unitarians and Universalists and pagan, atheists, and so they didn't read the King James Bible the way the South read it literally. Oh, there they are worshiping there together, Confederates and the Yankees.
This guy continues. This is a black man talking about how he loves the Confederate flag, how it's a flag of heritage to him, and how his grandfather was a Southern black man who was a black chaplain during the war.
He's a slave, which means he got freed by Lincoln.
Yep.
And he says here,
and this is not anything new. The South, before they started cracking down, used to have in the churches integrated services, and they would have black ministers. This is nothing new. No one's hiding anything. But the South cracked down on it. They got scared of the blacks because they were afraid of slave revolts. They were afraid that the slaves were going to revolt against them, especially after the Nate Turner revolt. And so they stopped teaching their slaves to read and write and the Bible. And that came later towards the end, as we got closer to the Civil War. They tried to stifle Congress with the Gag Act, but John Quincy Adams had to fight against that. You want to read some history? Read that. How in Congress, they would not allow people to speak out against slavery. Read in the Senate, where if you were up against the South, against the slaves, a Southerner would come up and beat you. William Sumner was beaten by this guy over Kane, almost killed. And guys were going armed into the Senate. He's not going to tell you that.
History has a strange way of recording things. To the victor go the spoils, but the war between the states.
So now it's the same sort of vision system. You know, if you read all history, you'll see exactly what's going on. Read when it comes to second memorial. He says they were wrong on both sides.
Yep, they were
He said
wrong
that's
on
why the
both
fight was
sides.
going on so long. And this side expected the war to go on. But the fact of the matter is that it was reparations that both sides are going to have to pay for the slavery that had happened 400 years. Don't forget, Thomas Jefferson wanted to blame King George III for slavery. He was stopped. He was forced to stop. He was going to put that in the Declaration of Independence, but the Southerners didn't want him to put it in there.
Right.
No real winner. And I believe that. We're still suffering today from that war. And he continues here. Now, this book, everything you were talking about.
Well, 3 million slaves were happy. I'll tell you that. 3 million slaves got freed.
War is Wrong is an excellent book. Now, I remember when I was in Bible school at Pensacola Bible Institute.
There we go.
And I remember, was it the day where we took the class picture? It might have been that day. It might have been a different day. But I remember old Peter Ruckman was sitting there, and here came the assistant pastor. And I was sitting on the front row, and I listened to what the assistant pastor said. Assistant pastor came out and gave a book to Ruckman, my old pastor. And he says, well,
He's your old teacher. Why do you keep calling me your pastor?
Because Robert Brake told me that he also went to church, to Peter Ruckman's church, not just a Bible school. See, so that's why. Yep.
Ruckman was the teacher there. He keeps calling his pastor. Ruckman was the major teacher there. He acts like he was going to his church. He was going.
He was
going to school.
Ruckman, you convinced me the South was right. Now, this man was a Yankee.
Oh, you convinced me. Oh, yeah.
And Dr. Ruckman said, hey, the South was right. Let me show you some books in order for you to understand what I understand, what I see. Now, Ruckman grew up in Maryland, so he was born a Yankee. I can't tell you how many friends I have down here in the South that are Yankees. And they all tell me, Breaker, the South was right.
Mm-hmm.
I said, were you talking about that as a kid? No, as a Yankee, they said the South was evil and the South was wicked. I moved down here. I saw something that I couldn't figure out.
No one says the South was evil. This guy's a moron. Lincoln never said the South was evil. The Confederacy was evil because it was defending an evil system of slavery.
Yes, slavery is evil. I'm 100% against it.
Why were they so nice? Why was it?
You get nice people in every country. What does that do with anything? What does that have to do with anything? You think the German people are nice people? What? You go to Germany, World War II, these people are nice. How the Japanese? World War II, man, these guys are nice people. Yeah. Individually, they were very nice people. What does that have to do with the issue of what they were fighting for?
Everything's just so great. Why was there such Southern hospitality?
Yeah. Why were they beating people in Senate, Robert Breaker, over the head with their cane and threatening their lives? Why were they gagging the Congress and the House of Representatives so they couldn't even bring up slavery? And John Quincy Adams had a fight against that when he was in the House of Representatives. He won't tell you that because he's got superficial knowledge, people. Just like he has superficial knowledge of the Bible. It's a mile wide and an inch thick and thick. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Why was there a church on every street corner? And they said, you know what? I began to study.
The one church is on every street corner in the North. This is the Philadelphia church age. You don't think the North is full of churches?
Civil War, and I found out the South was right and the North was wrong.
Oh, yeah. What are we wrong about?
And that's what you come to in a conclusion if you just simply look at the facts. And so I'll never forget that assistant pastor saying,
you don't have the facts.
Well, Ruckman, you convinced me the South was right.
Yeah, Ruckman convinced a lot of people of the stupid things.
I've met other people too, and many of them. Same thing. I've studied this out for myself. So one of the best books to find on the truth about the Civil War is this one. And it's modern. It's a new book. It was written, let me see if I can find you the date that this was written. And I would ask you as my viewer to please get this book and read this book and find out about this.
I would ask anybody with Breaker's view is to ask him about what the Confederate Constitution said. What were they fighting for in their Constitution? The Confederate flag represents what you're fighting for.
Yep.
They was fighting for the expansion of slavery. You can drop all you want about anything else. They rejected the idea with the Dred Scott decision that the black man, one, could become a citizen of the United States. That's why we need the 14th Amendment. Two, that the all men were created equal was for everyone, not just the white man. That came from the Dred Scott decision. And that's what they were hammering home. The Confederacy was built on that cornerstone of the Dred Scott decision. You don't believe it? Read the cornerstone speech by the then Vice President Stevens. I think it's Stevens. I don't know that guy's name.
Book and find out for yourself. Well, it was literally written in 2010, but it's been updated several times up to 2019 by Locke Lane Seabrook. Okay. Now, there's so many things, and the way that this book is set up, it's pretty cool. It's set up by saying, you were taught, well, here's the truth. You were taught, and here's the truth. You all through the whole book, it's you were taught this, but here's the truth. And that's what's so amazing about this book.
So amazing.
I would ask you to get it. It's really will help you, okay? Now, this book is the one entitled Abraham Lincoln was liberal, Jefferson Davis was conservative. Now, if you get this book will help you as well to see America today and how it was before. And this is what's interesting to me. Democrats were the ones in the South, and they were conservatives.
The Democrats was conservatives. They were slave owners. Democrats were responsible for Jim Crow laws. Democrats were responsible for gun control laws. Democrats were responsible for suppression of the black vote in the South during the Jim Crow days in order to keep the Democrats' control. But they're the conservatives.
The Yankees were liberals, and they were Republicans. Today, it's the exact opposite.
That's who would say that? Democrats. Democrats would say that. They say Republicans will come to them. Oh no, the Republicans were the Democrats of the South. That's what the Democrats want you to believe.
I trust what Ed
they're the same
says.
guys. Same guys.
Many of your Republicans claim to be conservatives, and many of your Democrats claim to be liberals. So we've seen a complete reversal. All right. Abraham Lincoln is the equivalent of a modern day Democrat socialist. And if you look into Lincoln, Lincoln actually liked a big government. He wasn't in favor of a small government.
He was a Whig, and they believed in internal improvements. Remember, keep things in context. There was no income tax then. It was tariffs. That's how you funded. So the country was basically had a problem because the country was going to have to deal with transportation issues and the growth of certain issues like that. So wages were for internal improvements that were paid for by the governments. While the South wasn't. The South was against all that.
Wanted a big government. You look at Jefferson Davis, he wanted small government. He was conservative.
Small government in the sense he wanted the idea that he wanted to keep his state basically internalized and keep the traditions alive and keep slavery. Slavery was part of their cornerstone, their traditions. And so that's what they were fighting for. They were fighting for to keep those that old way. And the issue was, how are you gonna pay for things and how are you gonna support things? But Lincoln, by any standards, if you look at today's standards, he would be totally conservative, a complete conservative. And during the war, Jeff Davis did nothing different than Lincoln did.
Even though he was a Democrat, he was more like our modern Republicans. Even though Lincoln was a Republican, he's more like our modern Democrats.
So how do you try to change? You can't put that's not how you read history. You can't read history. If you put Lincoln today in modern history, he'd be. If you put John F. Kennedy today, he'd be considered conservative. He'd be looking around and say, "These people crazy? These liberals."
And so this book really explains it well. And this book goes back to the American Revolution and the founding of America, and how there were two.
Lincoln was fighting for the Declaration of Independence, the founding principles of the founding fathers. That's why he'd be considered conservative. He was for the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson Davis was not. The Confederacy was not. That's the basis that you're going to look at. The Declaration of Independence. Was the Declaration of Independence the founding document, the cornerstone of the United States? Or was it for just white men, like the Dred Scott's decision said? I'm going to put this up and deal with some more. And I want to get the book. We'll go through it. This guy has a thing where, and hear about the heritage. Well, if heritage is the issue, why can't you interracial marry then with a black man who lives?
Of course, right? And Breaker's interracial marriage article is complete garbage.
Confederate flag. Your daughter, interracial, Christian man, all of a sudden now it's, hey, he's in heritage. Let's stop and put this up. And how would they do the books? I'll show you the books. He gives all these little anecdotes, somebody convinced, Peter Buckman, you have to convince the South is right. Yeah. Did you look at their constitution? They think slavery's right. They still think they want you to be a slave. Oh, you were bought with a price. We were bought out of slavery, not into slavery. That's why they want to change the word in 2 Corinthians 6:20 about slavery. If that is servant, and they change the word slavery. They change the word slavery. 2 Corinthians 6. Is it 9:59? Bought with a price.
I'm just letting Ed speak when he finds.
Yeah, excuse me. 1 Corinthians 6:20. We bought with a price, therefore glorify God in your body and your spirit, which are your God's. So I'm gonna stop with this up. 1 Corinthians 6:20. Put this up, and we'll go through it again and deal with this. And you say, well, why all the fuss? Well, clearly, it's an issue. Oh, the Confederate soldiers and Union soldiers were worshiping together. How about that? Isn't that amazing? After the town, all the Union soldiers came down and were Universalists and Unitarians. So we stopped and listened to this rest of this nonsense. Amen. Thank
you. Yep. Okay, I'll stop sharing now. Hello, mate. Hi, mate. Yeah, yep. Anyway, if anyone got any questions before I end this live stream, I'll just wait a minute and then and Ed is right, and I don't support slavery at all. I'll just wait one more minute and then I'll if no one's got any questions, then I'll end the stream. And we are all in the race of Adam and Eve, and it doesn't matter what color our skin color is. We're all just as much sinners. And that's why it's important that whoever's not saved, that they get saved. Jesus saves. And that gospel is so important. Right. Okay. So no questions. I might end the stream now. Okay. I'll see you on the next stream after. Okay. Bye.